Do you take these books to love, honor, and cherish for as long as you shall be reading them? Hi, welcome, come on in. My name is Aoife, and today, because we are slap bang right in the middle of wedding season, I thought this would be a really great time to go through some of the books that are on my radar that feature weddings. Either the couple in there is getting married, one of the main characters is going to a wedding. It is such a wonderful time to celebrate love and to celebrate togetherness and commitment. So what better way to celebrate wedding high season than to curl up with one of these books? If you yourself are getting married this summer, these might give you a little bit of inspiration into what you want to bring into your wedding. Or if you are just attending, these might give you a little bit more of a vibe before you go. I'm going to start with a middle grade book that is perfect for younger readers, and that is Christie's Big Day by Anne M. Martin. This is the 6th book in the Babysitter's Club series, and it is following Christie on her mother's wedding day. Christie's mother is going to marry Watson, who has been her partner for several years, and this is going to change Christie's life completely. Watson is living in a huge mansion, and he has got 2 kids of his own from his previous marriage, so now she's going to have not just her own brothers, but also some step siblings as well to add into the family. But it also means that Christie is going to move away from the home where she grew up and is going to move into Watson's mansion. This also means that she's not going to be living beside her best friends Marianne and Claudia anymore, and this may bring the Babysitters Club into turmoil. It does, however, mean that so many of Christie's family and relations are going to be in Stonybrook for the week leading up to the wedding, and the Babysitters Club has never been busier. They've been offered a huge amount of money to take care of all of Christie's cousins, and that means changing diapers, figuring out food routines, figuring out food allergies, and keeping a big army of kids all occupied for an entire week. I absolutely loved this book because you do kind of see a softer side to Christie as she's going through this book. She is a bridesmaid for her mother's wedding, and you see Christie kind of arguing with the idea that she is looking good in a dress, something she would never wear in her usual life. I really like seeing this kind of softer side to Christie that we don't see a whole lot of throughout the series. Next up is Crazy Rich Asians by Kevin Kwan, and this book and the entire trilogy is opulence on steroids. This book is set in Singapore, one of the world's smallest but richest countries, and it is following Nick Young, who is a member of one of Singapore's richest families. But Nick hasn't been in touch with his family for quite some time. He is living in the US, and he has been in a relationship with Rachel Chu for quite a while. Things are starting to get really serious between the two of them, but Nick has been invited back to Singapore to be a best man for his best friend Colin's wedding. While they are there, Nick introduces Rachel to his side of Singapore and the world that he grew up in, because it turns out that Nick has forgotten to tell Rachel that he's one of Singapore's most eligible bachelors and that his family has a net worth in the trillions. I absolutely adore this book. I love the hilarity of it, and I love the kind of zaniness of it, because they live in a world that I could never even set foot in, not to mind actually inhabit myself. They have the kind of money that I could never dream to see cumulatively in my entire lifetime. I absolutely adore this book. The whole series is just fantastic, but it also has one of the best adaptations I've ever seen. I absolutely love the movie of Crazy Rich Asians, and it's something that I will put on time and time again. If I just need a comfort watch, that will also drag me kicking and screaming out of my own life. Staying with Kevin Kwan, his most recent release is Lies and Weddings. This book follows Rufus, who is next in line for the Earl of Greshambury, and once upon a time was a super well-known model on the catwalks of Hong Kong. It's just that his life isn't exactly what Instagram would make you think it is. While his Instagram feed is full of opulent pictures and is full of wealth and decadence, his family is actually tumbling further and further into debt. The only way for the family to solve their money issues is for Rufus to marry a wealthy suitor. But there are so many women in line. There is a French woman who has got royal blood. There is another socialite from around the area that he grew up in. But there is only one woman that has ever caught Rufus's eye, and she is the literal girl next door. A slightly darker wedding recommendation is The Guest List by Lucy Foley, and I don't just recommend this book because there is a character called Aoife in it. This book takes place on a small island off the coast of Galway, and it spans an entire wedding weekend where one of the guests end up dead the next morning. Throughout the rest of the book, you are following the bride, the groom, the best man, one of the bridesmaids, the event planner, and the mother of the bride as you are trying to figure out who it is that has been found dead, who it was that killed them, and what is the reason for the dead body turning up in the first place. I was so gripped by this book. I was a little bit worried about this one because I'd heard some mixed reviews about it, but I had such a great time with this one. I think something that I also really enjoyed about it is that it is set in Ireland. I think it is set on a small island off the coast of Galway, which is one of my favourite places in the entire country. So having that little connection about it just made it all the more enjoyable for me. Next up is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. And this is not just a book about a bunch of people going to each other's houses. This actually does have a plot to it. It follows the 5 Bennet sisters, and their father is basically destitute. There is no money left in the house for them, and the only way that they are going to bring their family's fortune back is for them to be married off. So, all 5 of the sisters go off to regular balls, they go off to regular society events in order to try and find a suitor for them. Lizzie, the oldest Bennet sister, catches the eye of Fitzwilliam Darcy, and the entire book is almost like the original enemies to lovers story, where you see them absolutely have tensions boil over, but at the end there is an absolutely stunning scene where they truly come together, and there are a whole heap of characters as well that will pop up along the way that will truly keep you entertained the entire way throughout this book. Next is Delilah Green Doesn't Care by Ashley Herring Blake. This is the first in the Bright Falls trilogy, and I genuinely think this is the strongest book in the entire series. This is following Delilah, who about 10 years ago left Bright Falls and headed for New York to make her fortunes as a photographer. She hasn't spoken to her family since. She hasn't had any contact with her stepsister or with her stepmother. However, Astrid, her stepsister, is about to get married, and Delilah has been hired by her stepmother to be the photographer for the wedding. Not just for the wedding day itself, but also for all of the events in the 2 weeks leading up to the ceremony. So, Delilah comes back to Bright Falls, somewhat begrudgingly, and is reintroduced to Astrid's best friend Claire. Claire is one of the bridesmaids at the wedding, but Delilah had feelings for Claire back when they were teenagers. Turns out, those feelings were not so unrequited. It's just that Claire's life is a little bit more complicated right now. She is still in an on-off relationship with Jack, who is the father of her daughter Ruby, and they have got a kind of a push and pull relationship with one another that Delilah entering town might be the way to turn this relationship off for good. My next recommendation is The Wedding Crasher by Mia Sosa. This is following Solange and Dean. Solange works with her cousin as a wedding planner, and while she is planning one of the weddings one day, in the final couple of hours beforehand, she overhears the bride saying that she is not in love with the groom. Solange decides that she has to step in and goes to tell the groom everything that she's overheard. The issue is that this wasn't a marriage of love. And Dean already knew that he wasn't in love with the bride either. This was a marriage of convenience so that Dean could be seen as a married man looking to start a family, and he would be the perfect candidate for partner at his law firm. Because he still needs to keep that pretense up, Solange is roped in as his fake partner for a couple of weeks just to give the managing directors the idea that he is truly in love with somebody and that he is truly the family values man that they're looking for. However, as we all know with fake dating romances, those feelings never stay fake for too long. This was the second of the Mia Sosa books that came out, and it was actually the first one that I read, and I completely fell in love with it. Mia Sosa has got a fantastic writing style. Mia Sosa herself also has Brazilian heritage, so a lot of the people in her books, for example, will come from Brazilian families. They will celebrate their Brazilian heritage, they'll eat a lot of Brazilian food, and I absolutely love seeing that in books, seeing a character's heritage being really brought to life, and it was done in such a fantastic way here. Finally is one of the first ever wedding books that I read, and one of the first ever big steamy romances that I read, and that was The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. I know that this book is quite Marmite. Some people don't particularly love it, some people are a little bit more enamored by it. This one has a place in my heart because when I started my booktube channel, this is the first steamy romance book that I read. This is following Olive and Ethan, who are siblings to Amy and Dean, who have just gotten married. But Olive and Ethan have never particularly seen eye to eye. However, while they are at the wedding dinner, everyone except for Olive and Ethan eats the seafood buffet at the wedding dinner, and everyone except for Olive and Ethan gets food poisoning. The issue is Amy and Dane are supposed to leave for their honeymoon 2 days later, and they are in absolutely no fit state, not even to get to the airport. They are in no fit state to get out of bed. So Olive and Ethan are called in to go in their siblings' stead. The two of them are forced to spend time together in Hawaii, masquerading as a couple who have just gotten married and who are in the throes of honeymoon passion. And everything starts to thaw between the two of them when they start to have some real deep conversations. I do know that there's a lot of people who have an issue with the third act breakup in this book, and I will say I am one of them. But like I said, this one has a particularly special place in my heart just because it was the one where we all began. Those are some of my favorite books that feature a wedding in any capacity. Have you got any weddings that are coming up this summer? Or what is your favorite book that features a wedding? If you'd love to leave me a comment but you can't think of anything you'd like to say, then why not just leave me the bride or the white heart emoji. Don't forget to like and subscribe because I have new videos up every week. Now, get on out of here.